What are some truths people don't want to talk about? Humans will always be good or bad. You cannot eradicate hatred or all the awful things humans do unless you're willing to exterminate them. Some people will never change. Some can. The ones that can change are still hated. And most humans don't know what mercy and grace are anymore. Living with hatred in your heart doesn't make you a good person. There is a difference between being disgusted by the actions of someone or letting the hatred consume you to where you're no longer yourself, but a shell of waste. Who believes you and I evolved from a monkey? That came from a fish. That came from a soup. That came from a rock. That came from an explosion long ago. And far away Big Bang. That came from nothing. It was never and can't be tested nor observed. That is against the scientific method, resulting to this theory being unscientific. The belief that time, space, and matter all came from nothing. It's a fantasy. The trend of Gen Z being bad at tech literacy is really worrying. Russian. But as an observation of how people raised in a technologically advanced society will naturally prioritize offloading as much mental and physical work as they can to the point of skill atrophy. At best, it creates a new unelected power class that will have influence over every aspect of daily life. And at worst, it leads to a tech collapse. You don't have to feel bad about every bad thing that you read about. Whenever there is a tragedy that happens somewhere else in the eye, notice that it can make people feel sad. But your feelings don't change the situation. They don't make it better for the people grieving. So if you don't want to feel sad about the particular situation, it's okay. You're probably dealing with your own problems and you don't have to add more to it. Anything that they're ashamed of. Shame comes when you do or feel something you know is wrong. 99% of the time, this involves an abuse of a power dynamic. It can be something that you have learned is wrong, or something your nature tells you is wrong. Your nature comes from genetics, pathogens, and a little supernatural quantum magic. A lot of our nature is shared with all the other species of life on Earth. Magic Don Juan. Murder is a bunch of Chicago rappers celebrating jail time, first day out mixtapes, and music that arguably has more violence and hyper-explicit WAP lyrics than any other genre. Then the people doing the actual work at the awful companies, and the people doing the most work are getting the least, and can barely even participate in the fringes of society, and it's all made up. We're making it up, we are responsible, and we've decided to make up a horror show of a world. How devastating ice melting is. I'm a mathematician, and I read a paper on climate. It follows something called a double-fold bifurcation. We are incredibly close to a turning point where all the ice melts, and that turning point is very stable. Once all the ice melts, going back is nearly impossible. I saw this the other day on Reddit. Something to the effect. Anyway, if you're attractive, the world will let you know. If you're ugly, you have to find out on your own. Made me a bit sad, as I've known for a very long time that I'm not attractive. But c'est la vie. The truth about psychology is that people need illusions to survive. They tend to ignore and avoid anything defies the illusions they depend on and lie to themselves to hide from the truth. The illusion of self-control is vital to maintaining self-control. Tized by the majority of Western nations, is deeply flawed. Does not lead to the best outcomes for that nation's people and actively works against those who wish to live in homeostasis with the planet. Death isn't certain. There is no proof of an afterlife. When my aunt died in a car wreck, my mother clung to the idea that there definitely is a heaven and my aunt must be there. But the truth is that we don't know, and it's scary. The US has failed on so many levels that it's not even possible to measure new failures. They are kind of just the way of life here. Infrastructure, missing funds, corruption, systematic racism, failed public school systems, etc. A lot of people have incredibly sad and painful lives and die. No winning story. No tale about overcoming obstacles. Not a hint of things that made it worth it. Not every human life, though valuable, is redeemed in some way. We are more friendly to each other in person than we are to each other online. You're more likely to have a civil discussion on pressing issues face to face and willing to hear one another out than you would online. Panders to people in the States instead of being honest with the fact a drastic cultural change must occur for many Americans to get out of the cycle that the government put them in and keeps them in. You can't change a system by perpetuating its existence, and functions cannot fix a machine. All it can do is force the machine to stop working until a repair end shows up. Life is not fair. Meritocracy doesn't exist. You do what you can with the card you have been given. So don't feel bad about yourself. There is nothing you can do about it, no matter how much the US and EU fight their carbon footprint. A majority of the developing world countries can't operate without fossil fuel production, import, and usage. It doesn't matter if there's a God. Just because the hand of God won't smite you doesn't mean the hand of some rando won't. Just be nice. Treat people fairly. De-escalate. Adulting doesn't come with a manual. And your pet probably does steal your spot on the bed. And Wi-Fi signals should be considered a basic human right by now. Hard work rarely pays off as well as you think it should, and life usually is determined by where you start off, and not how much work you put into things. Teachers aren't your children's parents. You had them, you raised them. Teach them respect and manners and social skills. I'll teach them history. You're not in as great a country as you think you are, and you're not as far from the people on the street as you imagine. We have no good plan for what to do about propaganda which has enslaved many people's minds for nefarious purposes. Your political party of choice doesn't really care about you, but rather is generally deferential to lobby groups. For men ... moisturize everything daily so you look like Chris Hemsworth when you're 40 instead of Gary Busey. Plenty of rich people have never worked hard, and plenty of poor people have worked hard their entire lives. The universe doesn't care if you are a good person or good to church daily. You can still get screwed over. Western democracy has failed, all politicians are corrupt, and it will most likely not get better. We're all getting older, and are shocked to find getting old means not feeling as young anymore. Some friendships are held together by nothing more than a shared dislike of the same people. Pedophiles are as legitimate as gays. The more downvotes I get, the more it proves me right. And death, failure, and vulnerability are truths people often avoid discussing. The fact that Freemasons and Zionists are also involved in Operation Gladio. Your parents are probably more messed up than you're willing to consider. Social media is destroying people's mental health and social skills. Trying to achieve perfection makes things worse in the end.